How you doing? My name's Gordon Gebert. I'm the head of MUG, the International Mirage Users Group, and president of G4 Productions. And I'm here to show you how to use your Ensoniq Mirage and all the important parameters that relate to each other. So here we go. We're going to try out those parameters right now. All right. I hope you got your parameter card ready, and we're going to go over the filters in the Ensoniq Mirage. I'm going to make sure we're in the lower keyboard, L1. Hit parameter, and we're in the lower keyboard. I hit 40, which is your attack on your filter. We'll bring up the attack, and the filter goes slowly. 41 is your peak. You'll hear the filter open and close quickly, and peak higher. Decay is 42. The filter decays slower as you bring up the parameter. As you bring it down, it will decay faster. 43 is your sustain. This all has to do with your filters. And release. 44 is release, and 44 coincides with 54, your envelope and your amplitude, which is the loudness of how long your sounds are going to be, how short your sounds are going to be. So 50 is a short attack, just like on a regular synthesizer. 50. If you bring that up, it'll bring the sound in slowly. .51 is your peak. This all has to do with sound. I'll bring 50 back down again, so it comes in quicker. Your decay. That's 42. That's your decay on your filter. 52 is decay. Now we'll bring up 53, which is your sustain, and bring up 54, which is your release, and you'll hear the sound sustain. Blend in together. These are all have to do with your attack and decay, sustain, release, and your filters and your envelope, your sound length, just like any other ordinary synthesizer. So you could play with all these parameters together and get all sorts of synthesizer effects with them. Now the filters 40 through 44, parameters 40 through 44, have to do with 36, which is your actual filter. And 37 is your resonance on your filter. We'll bring 36 down, you'll hear the resonance better. That all has to do with all envelopes and filters. All right, we're going to get to the tuning, and then we'll get to the sequencer. So we're going to go to parameter 21, which is your master tune on the whole keyboard. That will tune the whole keyboard, controls the whole thing, 21. We'll go back in tune to 50. 22 is your pitch bend range, which controls your wheel. Now if I bring this up and you hit the pitch bend wheel down here, we'll get that on camera. Okay, now we go to parameter 23, and that is your keyboard velocity. sensitivity. If you got something that needs a lighter touch, if you're a light keyboard player, go higher in the parameter, the value. If you're a heavy keyboard player, go lower in the parameter value, and it'll keep your velocity sensitivity correct with the keyboard. 24 is your keyboard balance, which balances your top hit, well, actually top key, which we'll get to. It's your lower and upper bank will be balanced with the keyboard balance. That brings the bottom part of the keyboard in balance with the upper. We'll bring it back to 30, 31. And 25, the upper and lower program link, when you turn this on and you hit your program button, when you want to change your lower programs, you have 4 lower programs, lower 2, lower 3, lower 4. It will change your upper automatically also, so it'll save you time. There's lower and upper. When you have it off, turn 25 off, when you change the upper banks, upper 3, upper 2, it won't change your lower bank. It will stay on lower 4, but your upper bank changes. 1, 2, 3, or I could change the lower bank, and the upper will stay where it is. But we're going to keep the link together so we know what we're doing with both keyboards. Now I'm going to show you how to load the sequencer, which I didn't even know how to use the sequencer for 2 months. I didn't know there was a sequencer on the programs on the Ensoniq discs. So we'll show you how to load these up. I'm loading a sound, which these are all mug sounds. This is the Chroma Square Wave, so I might as well give a plug-in for the mug sounds. To load the sequencer, you hit load in the sequence bank 2, which coincides with sound bank 2. Hit enter. We have the sequencer loading up, and now we hit play. All right, now I'll show you all the parameters that coincide with all the sequencer. Now we have, let me see, we'll go in order here. To record a sequence, hit record, and you'll see record sequence blinking. You hit it twice, and it's ready to record your sequence. So when you start playing, cancel. You just recorded your sequence. Now we'll hit play back. I'll hit cancel. 88 turns your sequence onto a loop. It will keep playing continuously. The time of 88, it's on. And you'll hear it continuously looping. This will go on unless you hit cancel. Now, when you turn 88 off, it'll only play you through your sequence once. Ended. All right, now this has a neat feature that is not explained on the parameters here. You hit record, and while it's blinking, record start, hit play. And you'll see OD there. It doesn't mean overdose, it means overdub. I could overdub a part on it. Now we'll play. Overdub. Okay. You can keep overdubbing until you fill up the polyphonic keyboard, and then it'll lock up. You can't play any more notes after that. And finally, we could save the sequence to disk. We will hit save, and we could save up to 8 banks on a disk. Save 1, save 2, save 3, save 4, save 5, save 6, save 7, and 8. So we're going to save that to bank 8. Oh, we got a protected disk here. That's what the PD means. We'll pull out the disk, and we'll show you here. This little tab here, when it's open, means the disk is protected. You cannot write over anything on the disk, any sequences or sounds. So what we'll do is close this little tab here, and that unprotects the disk. Now we can write over on the disk any sounds we want. It'll erase anything on there. So we'll pop it back in there, and we'll save 8, enter, and now it's saving the sequence. Now we could load 8 and see if we got our sequence on the disk. We have our sequence on the disk. So now we will protect the disk again, so we won't erase anything on this disk, any important data on it. Also with the disks, you use single-sided double density disks, single-sided on the new Ensoniq, the DSK. A lot of MUG members called and said, why aren't you sending sounds on double-sided double density? On the shipment of the keyboard, it says here, use only quality double density discs, not double-sided. It's single-sided double density discs. We use Maxell, Sony, any good name brand discs, and you'll be okay with your sounds. You won't be getting any errors. If you do get any errors on your disk, they'll come up DE, disk error, which is another tip. If you get a disk error, load lower bank first, then an upper bank separately. And sometimes you'll get a lower bank to load, and sometimes the upper bank is your disk error, and you might be able to save half a sound, half a bank. So finally, we got the sequence saved on the disk, and we'll go on to the next segment. We're going to give you a few MUG tips. Tip number 1 with the disks. I put a tag on the outside of the disk, and when you put it in the disk drive, the tag sticks out of the disk drive, and you can read what bank, what sounds are. So when you're loading, you don't have to take the disk out to read it all the time because you put your tag on the disk. Instead, you put it outside the disk, and you know what's inside the disk drive. So tip number 2 is you have your parameter card here. And the parameter card, you could probably get it duplicated or with the card itself, tape it onto the keyboard, and you have your parameters all the time there. So you know what you're doing all the time, and you don't have to lose your parameter card. So you could tape that on there, or you have 2 sides here, get it cropped right, and just stick it on your Mirage there. And tip number 3, on the old keyboards, they had the old block keys. You could either tape on the keys a 1, 2, 3, tape the numbers on the blocks themselves, and you can see them easier in a live situation, or paint with nail polish or something that glows, and you'll be able to see the buttons easier in the dark when you're playing live. So there's a couple of tips from MUG you could use for your Mirage. All right, now we're really going to get into the guts of the keyboard here. I'm going to explain top key and how samples from the lower and upper bank can cover each other, and that's how you get a lot of sounds on one disc with all these program changes that you do on the keyboard. And right now I have a sound. I'll play a sequence with. You got a regular sequence type Van Halen type synthesizer sound. And what we're going to do is we loaded the whole keyboard, and we're going to load an upper sound with that lower sound. So I'm going to load a blank in the upper sound. We usually get this is a blank formatted diskette when you load those blanks up. I just loaded an upper bank, and you still hear that sound, that particular sound. So what we'll do, in the lower keyboard, we'll look at we'll go to L1 on the parameters. Make sure you're working in the lower keyboard, and go to 26. These are going to be a lot of parameters, but you're going to see how they relate to each other when you're working with these. 26, the value is 1, so we're working on wave sample number 1. We're going to go to 72, which is your top key. And it says 61. Now 61 means that wave sample number 1 is covering the whole keyboard. Now I'm going to lower that and try to uncover the top sound on the top.
This is a blank formatted diskette. This is a blank formatted diskette.
We just uncovered the upper sound by lowering that lower sound. We could cover it up again, going up to 61. That covers the whole keyboard again. We'll lower it again.
This is a blank formatted diskette.
Blank formatted diskette.
This is a blank.
So now we'll go back to the wave samples again. 26, number 1. 27 is your initial wave sample, what you want to hear, what you're hearing, which is 1. That's wave sample number 2. So 27, we're hearing wave sample 2. 26, we want to go to wave sample 2 and work on it. 26 brings you to the wave sample you want to work on. So 26. Now to find out what sample you're working on, go to 27, you're working on sample 2 you're hearing on the bottom. 26 is the wave sample you're working on, number 2. To find out where it is on the keyboard, go to 67, which is your octave changes. We'll change the octave. So now we know we're playing with that sample. So now we can do anything we want to that sample. Knock it in any tune. 67. Now I'm going to load a multi-sampled diskette to show you all the different wave samples. So we'll do that in a moment. I have a Mesos disk here, and I'm going to load the third bank on the Mesos disk. So then we can get all 8 wave samples going. And to do this, I'll show you a little extra trick here. Instead of shutting the machine off, we want to get the Mesos function. You don't have to shut a machine down to get a different operating system going. You could hit load lower and load upper, and then hit 0 programming. It says LO in the display, and hit enter. That'll load your whole operating system. So you don't have to shut down the machine every time you want to load a different operating system. That's called a warm boot. Every time you load that way, it's a warm boot instead of when you turn on the machine, that's a cold boot. You're loading up the whole machine up. Now you're resetting the whole machine. So now we have a Mesos disk. We're hearing 1 and 2 in the lower keyboard and 1 and 2 in the upper keyboard. We're going to load bank 3 now. Bank 3 is going to say 1 through 8. 1 through 8 is all the different samples, the sections of the samples. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now you have the 8 different wave samples all split up in the memory, which I'll explain the memory right now. I know we're jumping around, but you'll get how everything intertwines and connects to each other. Wave sample. The memory is from 60 in the Mirage, from 00 to 61, which is FF. And what it does is it's in hexadecimal numbers. It's not 1 through 99, and that's your whole wave sample. It's from 00 all the way to FF, and in between is all your different sections of wave samples that you could use. You could split up this memory any way you want. And it's in the lower half you have that, and in the upper half you have 8 separate wave samples you could split up in the lower half and the upper. So what we're going to do is go into the lower half and see how we could get into the individual wave samples now. So we go to 26. 26 is wave sample 1. Now you hear 1. So we're going to make sure we're working on 1. So we go to parameter 67 and change the octaves. That's how you find out you're working on the sample. Now we hit 2, and we're still in parameter 67 changing octaves, but it's not going to affect number 2. It just affects number 1. So we'll change 26 to 2 and hit 67, your octave change. It doesn't have to say 2. It could be anything you record into the keyboard. You could say hello, and it'll change the octave, and you know you're working on that sample. And so on. 26, you change to 3, we could change 3, and so on, all the way up 1 through 8. So that's how you get into your different wave samples that you want to get into. So if you want to sample and just use the different wave samples, number 1, and sample, you turn 77 multi-sample on, and you'll be able to sample all the different segments, which we'll go into later on. We're going to go into looping quickly, and what looping is an electronic way of making a tape loop. Instead of using actual tape and looping a sound and have a continuous sound, it does it electronically, with the digital recording, makes a sound loop around. So what we have here, hope you can hear me, it sounds like Kennedy Airport. That's one of Mug's airplanes there, and that sound is looped. It's continuous. So what I'll do is shut the loop off, and you'll hear the actual recording of what we did. So we'll go to 65, which is loop on, and we'll shut that loop off, and you're going to hear the sound as it's actually recorded. It's a long sample, 8 seconds long. There, that was the end of the recording right there. We'll go to the up more, so you hear it quicker. That's the actual recording. So when we turn 65 on, it'll be continuous. We'll have a continuous sound, and it won't stop until I take my hand off the keyboard. You can actually hear the loop now. Now there's many different loop points. They call them loop points. What we'll do is see where the wave sample starts in the memory. It starts on 0, 0, and the wave sample ends on FF. We used all the memory in the lower half of the keyboard. Now I'm just working in the lower half of the keyboard. All that I do in the lower half, you could use in the upper half. Everything that I've done in the lower, it's just explaining the lower half. We could duplicate all these functions on the upper half. So now we're in the lower. We have used all the memory in the lower bank, from 60 to 0, 0, all the way to FF. Now we could take any segment of that sample and loop it at any point. So let's see where the loop started on this particular loop. D.F. That's a particular segment in the memory. D.F. That's parameter 62, loop start. 63 is loop end. It ends on FE. Now, there's particular points you could start loop starts and loop ends, and it gets very difficult. And I suggest using a visual editing system, hooking up with computers. But this is a basic Mirage video. We're just explaining, touching all the basics of the keyboard. We're not really getting into the actual techniques of how to do loop starts, loop ends, and getting good loops, which I suggest using it with a computer. So what we'll do, we'll change the loop start. I'm going to use the beginning of the whole sample. We're going to go all the way down to 0 here. There we go, all the way to 0. And now we're going to go to the loop end. We're going to use FF all the way to the end and turn the loop on. That whole recording is going to start over. Now I'll make a short loop. So I'm going to shorten up the end, 63. I'm going to bring it all the way to the beginning where the other part of the loop started, 0, 0. You see it going through the numbers. All the way to the beginning. Whoop, went past it. There's 0, 0 and 0.1. Hear that? The loop is very short and it's repeating very quickly. Now I'm going to bring the loop end gradually. That's how you get loop starts and loop ends. I could put different sounds. You could experiment with any sound you want and start loop starts and loop ends. They're good on hits on records. When you have you hear the Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. They loop the sound. It sounds like it's a continuous recording, but you get one beat going, and when you loop it around, you have a continuous segment, like a sequence part or a loop in a drum machine, so it sounds continuous. And you have to find the exact right spot. But that's how you get the right spot, from loop starts and loop ends. We'll go on to the next segment. And suppose it's a little too long. Suppose you have extra noise on the end of it, or you did a hit off a record, and there's too many beats or anything, you want to clip it. We're going to show you how to clip the sample. But before you clip anything or manipulate the samples, make sure you always save a backup on a disk. So save your sounds to a disk before you manipulate them. In case you ruin the sample, you could resave it and start your work over. So what we have here is
this is a blank formatted diskette.
Our standard, this is a blank formatted diskette. We want it to say this is a blank. We want to cut out formatted diskette. So we'll start on 60, which is the beginning of your sample. And we're working in the lower bank only. We could do this in the upper bank, anywhere. So working in the lower bank. 60 is the beginning of your sample, 0, 0. 61 is the end of your sample, F.F. Now we are going to move the end of the sample. I'm going to move it down to E. This is the parameter 61 we're moving down. I'm going to go down to D.F. Now to clip the sample, when you do this, it's very important that you do this correctly, or you ruin the sample. You have to start from scratch. You turn on parameter 65, which is your loop switch. Now this loop switch acts as a splicer, as if you're electronically splicing your sound, as if you're cutting a tape. When you're doing your tape loops and stuff like that, you're cutting a tape. So 65 is off. Once we turn it on and back off, it clipped 61, it clipped all the past D.F all the way to FF. It clipped that out. It cut it to that. So let's hear what it clipped to.
This is a blank formatted diskette.
All right, it just clipped the end of after this is a blank formatted diskette. We're going to go down drastically now. We're going to go down, all the way down in memory to 9.F. It's almost the halfway mark of your 8 seconds of sampling, almost 4 seconds. We're going to go to 65, turn it on and off. That's electronically clipping your sound.
This is a blank formatted.
We got it clipping. This is a blank.
This is a blank formatted.
It's clipping on disk. So we're into the sound. So we're going to go down a couple of more steps. Hit 65, on and off, clipping it again.
This is a blank formatted. This is a blank formatted.
We're getting there. So we'll go down a couple of more steps. On 61, that's your wave sample end. And hit 65 again, on and off.
This is a blank formatted.
We just wanted to say this is a blank, so we're going to go down more. And you keep experimenting this way. You could do it with any sound that you have, any musical sound also. 65 will turn on and off, clip again.
This is a blank formatted. This is a blank formatted.
So we're going to go down even further.
This is a blank format.
All right, we're almost there. So we're going to go a couple of steps at a time so we don't cut it too short.
This is a blank format.
Bring it down some more.
This is a blank point.
Coming down even shorter, a couple of steps at a time.
This is a blank point.
We just want, this is a blank, so we'll go a couple of steps.
This is a blank. This is a blank. This is a blank.
Now we cut everything out after this is a blank.
This is a blank. This is a blank.
Now what we could do with that also, which I showed you before, we could loop that, so it'd say this is a blank over and over, and I'll demonstrate the looping again. So we'll go to parameter 60 and see the beginning. We'll make sure we're in a lower bank, lower, 60, 0.0. We'll go to 61, which is 5.6, a weird ending, but we'll use it. Now we'll go to the loop start, 62. Loop start will bring all the way down to 0. And we'll go to the loop end. Loop end is parameter 63, and it's set at 5.5 already. We'll go to 65, turn it on, and this is what you get.
This is a blank, this is a blank, this is a blank, this is a blank, this is a blank.
Looping over and over.
This is a blank, this is a blank, this is a blank.
So that's an example of how to clip your wave sample, clip the end, and then add a loop to it. So we'll go on to the next segment, and we'll teach you more. That was our Juno strings from the Mug collection. I have to put a little plug in for the Mug sounds. And what we have here is a nice string sound. And I'll show you a little Mug trick that we use in one of the parameters changes. You could change the parameters here, and you could save any configurations you want, 4 different sounds, 4 different changes for your sound. What I like to do is thicken up all the sounds, make them chorus against each other, or flange, and I'll show you what we do with all the different settings. So we're going to come down to upper 1 and lower 1, and we're going to make this a thicker, more chorusy strings. So what parameters we'll be using for that is we're going to work in the lower bank first, and we're going to use 34. Now 34 changes your oscillator mix. Now it's down to 0, so you've got 1 oscillator working, actually 1 sample. So what I want to do is go halfway and have the 2 oscillators mixing together. So the number it goes up to is 63. So you want half of 63, which is even around 31, 32 or 31. We're going to go to 31 for parameter 34. And what we do have here is we have 2 oscillators working together now. Now what we want to do is detune them a little bit. And we want the second oscillator to go phase against the first oscillator, so parameter 33 does the trick. We'll go to 33, hit the value, it's at 0. Now listen to the sound. That flanging effect. Now I could detune it even more. Put slight chorusing or heavy detuning. Now we could knock this way out and get dissonant. We'll bring it back down. Now you want this to work in the whole keyboard. So this just works on the lower sound. We're going to get a nice chorusing there. Now the upper sound is just your plain. We want to do the same thing to the upper. So what we do is hit program, and we're going to hit the upper bank, upper 1. We hit once, get in the upper bank. We're going to hit 34 and go halfway again. We picked 31 was our halfway point. So now you got 2 oscillators going. Now we're going to hit 33 and start detuning them. Got a nice full thick string sound from that. Now that's saved in your upper one and lower one. That's just one parameter. Now we could go to the next upper one and upper two. And what do we have here? You got your simple strings again. So you could go back to other parameters and change whatever sound you want. You could change the attack, what we did in the beginning of the video. We could change the attack, the peak, the decay, and the sustain, release on the filters, on the amplitude, and save that in upper two and the lower two, and lower three, upper three. We could start changing them so we have different parameters, different sounds for all your different segments, up to 4 different program variations for all your sounds. So we could also get different samples in those different programs, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next segment. All right, we're going to get into different sounds, different samples on one bank. I just loaded a bank, and it was called the DX7, 16 samples in one bank. So what I'm going to do is explain how that disc is made and how you can do it yourself with all the different samples. We're going to go to the lower bank only, so I'll explain it in the lower bank. We're going to go to parameter 27 and see what sample number 1 is being used, and we're going to look at the top key, the 61. So that means wave sample number 1 in the lower bank covers the whole keyboard, and this is the sounds. That's one sound from the DX 16 samples. So we'll go to parameter program change number 2 and see what that sound is. L3 is that nice Hammond I had. And L4, we have a different sound. So that saves a lot of space, and you get a lot of sounds for your money on this disc. All right, we're going to show you 72. We'll go back to program 1. 72 was up to 61, and it was wave sample number 1 that we were using. Now we're going to change to program number 2. And we're going to look at 27, and it shows that we're using wave sample number 3, and we'll see how far up the keyboard it goes. It covers the whole keyboard. That is sound number 2. So 27, number 1 is covered up completely. It goes in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to the 8 samples. So number 3 is the sample being used for the sounds. Number 1 is ignored right now. 26 is whatever sample you want to work on. 27 is whatever sample that want to have priority in sounding in the keyboard. So that's how we see what sample is doing what sound in the keyboard. L3, where we'll go to lower bank 3, program change, and it's using sample number 5 and sample number 7. And you're saying what happened to 2, 4, 6, 8? We'll show you what happens with that. We're going to go back to L1, sample number 1. 72, it's the whole keyboard. We're going to another parameter, number 28. We're going to see that number 28 is on. Now number 28, you look on your card, and it says mix mode, on, off. Got your handy parameter card. Hope you got it taped on your keyboard there. And it says mix mode on. What it's doing is mixing wave sample number 1 and 2 together. Now, whatever you have on number 27, like number 1 wave sample, the next wave sample next to that is what your mix mode would be, number 2. If you had your 27 set to number 2. The next wave sample is number 3, and that's what gets mixed with number 34, your oscillator mix. That's what's mixing together. And your mod mix wheel, you could use your mod mix wheel to mix the 2 oscillators also, and I'll show you that later on also. So what we're doing here, I'm showing you all how to get the different samples in the different programs. Lower 1, lower 2, lower 3, lower 4. So you want in each bank. So you could change lower 2, 27. You don't have to have wave sample 3 there. You can put any wave sample. Wave sample parameter 27 is a good way to get to the wave samples really quickly. If you have a disk full of wave samples and you don't want to go through program changes, L1, L2, L3, you could stay on L1 and switch to 27, and that could be your oscillator changing. You're changing your sounds. So suppose you're playing a nice... That's a quick way to go through the sounds in your keyboard. Now we'll get to the mod wheel. Now the mod wheel, in addition to just adding modulation, your vibrato and all that type of effects, can be a mix wheel. Now we have a particular sound here. Now we're going to move the mod wheel and watch the blend. Move the mod wheel forward and you're going to the next sample in order. What sample are we using? Number 3. It's going up to number 4 when we move the mod wheel forward. So we could put them in between. We could put this mod wheel in the middle and mix the 2 sounds together. That. I'll show you how that's done. It's parameter number 28 is turned on, and that's your mix mode. Your mix mode, 28 on, 27 is oscillator 3, that's down here. That's 3, and 4 is over here. I'll prove that's number 4. We'll put it back to 3 and move it to 4. And that's your other sound. And we can mix those 2 together right in the middle. To also get them to mix, you have to have parameter 34 at 31 in the middle, so you know you hear both oscillators sounding. And you can detune the oscillators also. So we'll go on to the next segment. Here is get to the lower bank, 60. Make sure we're working on wave sample 1. We're going to put wave sample 1 spot, so we're going to make sure we're working on wave sample 1 is 26. We're working on it, and we can hear it by 27. So we'll go to 60, and it's 0, 0. 61, 7.5, like I said, is the halfway point. So what we want to do is drive that up to make the memory. It's only half the memory. It's not going to fit. Let's see what happens. We'll try and fit this whole thing, that whole wave sample up there. So we're going to go to upper 1, 26, that sample number 1, 27, number 1, we're working on that. We're in the upper bank, upper 1. Well, we're going to transfer this sound down to lower. We're going to try and fit it and see what happens. Parameter 17, lower copy 1. So lower copy, and it can't enter. That's what we get. So what we have to do is go back to the lower bank. 60 is 0, 61 is 7.F. We're going to drive that up to F.F. We drive that all the way up so we can fit all the memory. That's making all the space so that bass could fit in there. There we go. Now we're going to go back to the upper bank, upper 1, and 17 in Mesos, the Mesos function. That's what 17, you could only use that when we have the Mesos operating system running on this particular keyboard. We're going to copy it into 1, wave sample 1. There we go. It blanks out, and it pops up, and what do we have here? Bass. Now we have to do a little more manipulating here. We have it in the lower bank, 60. We're going to make sure the sample only goes up to 15. We're going to bring it all the way up to the halfway point. There's no program variations. What we do to copy program variations also, we'll go to the upper and we'll use parameter 15. Copy 1. We copied, so we're going to go upper 2 and hit 15, lower copy it into the lower 2, and see what happens. Let's play the upper bank in upper 2 and upper 1. Those are all the different bass sounds, the parameter changes, but we are changing all those down to the lower. So we're going to use 15 again, upper 3 down to the lower 3. Let's see if that works. 3. There we go. And we're going to change upper 4 to copy down to the 4th slot. There we go. So we should have all those parameter changes, all those different sounds. Now we have all the parameter changes, all the program variations that were in the upper are all copied to the lower part of the keyboard. That's all done with Mesos. We haven't sampled any particular sounds. When you sample, input into the audio in, use your regular mic, and you could sample any particular sounds at different sample time rates, and this is how you manipulate all those samples that you make. I hope all the techniques that I've shown here you can use. You don't have to go by everything I say. You experiment. What I'm doing is trying to lead you to experiment with the keyboard. You play with all the parameters, see what interrelates with each other. I discussed all the parameters that interconnect with each other. I know it skipped from space to space. There's a lot to learn, a lot more to learn about the Ensoniq Mirage. It's one of the most supported keyboards around, and Mug has one of the largest sound collections that you could use. And when you receive sounds from Mug, you can use all these techniques to move the samples around, even manipulate them even more, put them in different banks together, and I hope I've started you on your way to moving samples around. And in the next videotape, I'm going to show you how to sample very high quality samples with visual editing systems and using sample filters and all the different equipment that comes with the Mirage. Will be demonstrating that, and I hope you could learn a lot more with my next videotape. Okay, we're going to get to the most important part, which is why you bought the machine, is to how to sample with it. To do basic samples here, we got our parameter card. We're going to go through parameters 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77 to do the basic sampling and go through the parameters and see what they do to it. All right. What we're going to do to sample is we're going to plug in a microphone. We're going to use the mic, and we're going to plug it into audio in here on your Mirage, and we're going to go to parameters 75, and 75 is either the mic input or level input. Now, you can't change the level input in the Mirage itself. You can only do it from your source, which is from a mic or from an amplifier. So we're going to use the mic. Value is off, that's set for the microphone. When you turn it on, that's set for line level. So we're going to set it to off, that's for your mic. All right, to sample, a basic sample. We're going to hit the upper button on sample. It'll be flashing SU, and then it'll come to the levels. There's a level. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You want to get that top light just faintly blinking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, to sample, we just hit enter now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. Sample finished. That's what SF means. Now we'll hit a key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, now we're going to sample a lower. We're going to go through the same thing in the lower part of the keyboard. Hit lower. It'll be blinking. Same thing. 1, 2. We're going to say hello now, the difference from the top and the bottom. Now we hit enter. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There you got your basic samples for the keyboard. Now we're going to go through sample the input filter and sample time adjustment. We're going to see what these parameters do to it. 73. That's your sample time adjustment. We're going to drive it all the way up to 99 and see what it does to the sample. Okay, now we're going to hit sample. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Now we fit a longer sample in the... now I'm hitting the same key that it was before, but it's higher in pitch now. That's how you get your longer samples in there. Now we're going to take that same parameter, 73, we're going to bring it all the way down to 0. Down to 1, actually. And we'll see what it does. Down to 30, that's the lowest part of the parameter, I'm sorry. All right, now we hit sample. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lowers the pitch of the sample, but it's not as long. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you're going to use 74 as your input filter. I'm going to drive that up and sample. And we'll hear the clarity difference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2. Now we're going to change that and bring it all the way down. Close the filter. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you open up that filter after you sample, and you bring up the highs. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That brings all your highs in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now we're going to go to sampling threshold. Sampling threshold, that tells you when you put in a louder sound in the keyboard, it will start sampling once it gets a signal in. And that's what the sampling threshold does. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going to drive that sample threshold up. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, sampling threshold, that takes in what the signal. You need a more powerful signal. And once it hears the signal, it'll start sampling. If you have a low signal, we're going to drive that parameter all the way down. It won't sample until it starts hearing the signal. But all the way to 0, it will start sampling right away. It starts sampling right away. 1, 2.
It starts sampling right away.
You hear that there's an empty spot right before I said it starts sampling right away. So you want that brought up a little bit, and once it hears a signal, then it'll start the sampling. And you could clip the samples also. Now, that was just basic sampling. What we want to do to user multi-sampling, so you could sample different segments in the whole keyboard, is turn parameter 77 on. And that will turn on all 8 wave samples on the bottom and all 8 wave samples on the top, and you could go into the different segments and multi-sample now. So now we're going to go into the bottom part of the keyboard we're going to work on. We're going to go 26, which is your wave sample that we want to work on, is number 1. Let's go to 72. We're going to bring that down. 72 is your top key. I'm going to bring top key down to about 8. And we're going to sample in that one little segment there, 60, 61. We're going to give it a little bit of sampling time. We're going to shorten the sample time. 61 is the wave sample end. We're going to go to 1F. All right, we're going to give it a little short sampling time. We're going to hit lower sample. And now we're going to sample. I'm going to say 1. 1. Now I want to bring that, tune that up. Now we gave it such a short sampling time it didn't even complete the word 1. We'll try that again. We'll try to get the whole word 1. I'll say it quicker. 1. And I fit 1 in there. All right, we're going to go to 26, bring it up to 2, and we're going to sample and wave sample number 2 now. We're going to give that a little, we're going to start from 1F, sample beginning, 1.F. We have to go 1 past 1.F for the beginning, so we don't cut into our other sample, which is 2.0 now. And we're going to give it 2.0. I'm going to bring back the wave sample end to save some memory for the other samples. We're going to go to 3.F. So it's 2.0 to 3.F. We're going to sample. Now we hit lower sample. I'm going to say 2. We're going to put 2 in wave sample 2. 2. Here we go. We got 1 and 2. Now you could move these samples anywhere on the keyboard. You could do that with parameter 72 top key. We could also move the samples around as if we did when we moved that bass sample from the upper keyboard to the lower keyboard. We could move them in different segments. Now we'll sample in 3, wave sample number 3. We'll repeat the process. The end of 2 was 3.F, so we'll go 1 more past 3.F, which is 4.0, and 61. We'll save some memory for the rest of the samples. We'll go 4.0 to 5.F, and we'll say 3. Okay. Hit lower sample. 3. Now 2, we have to go to parameter. We'll work on number 2. Look at the top key, which is 31 up here. We want to uncover that other sample. That top key, sample number 2 is covering number 3. So we're going to lower the key number. There's your 3. In fact, I'll sample it even a little clearer. 3. There we go. And so forth. You could keep doing that. In the bottom part of the keyboard, you have all that memory to work with, and everything you did in the bottom part of the keyboard, you could do in the upper part of the keyboard. So that's how you sample, basic sampling and multi-sampling. When you really want to get into sampling, you'd have to, I suggest using the visual editing systems and all the accessories that go with the keyboard. With basic sampling, you're not going to get as good quality as all the user groups that use all the visual editing systems, the computers that aid it in sampling good quality samples and like factory samples that Ensoniq have. And it's more of an art and a science to manipulate these sounds and get a good recording. So all you have to do is experiment over and over, and then you'll get good use out of the Mirage and you'll get good samples out of it. So for now, happy sampling, and send them into Mug when you get a good sample, and try out the Mug Club, because we have a lot of samples from all around the world, and the people that have done good efforts and used all the visual editing systems and all the aids that we use with the Mirage. So that's it for basic sampling and all the basic functions for the Mirage, and have fun with the Mirage.